So what do we all think about this revelation? I mean, does his drug-taking past means that now, 20 years on, he's not fit to lead the country? Is that where we're at? Is this tainted his whole leadership campaign?
I think it depends on your point of view, but me personally, he was a journalist, not a politician when he did it. I think it would be a very different conversation if he said, I have taken cocaine whilst being an MP, because, of course, MPs shape policy for the rest of us and sort of largely tell us how to live our lives. But as a journalist, he probably wasn't thinking he was going to be a politician. And I think it's a very dangerous path to go down if you say that everyone who's going to become an MP has to have a completely blameless background, because otherwise you'll just end up with a load of sort of automatons who've never had a real life. I'm not saying you have to have taken cocaine to have a real life, but I think people make mistakes, and making mistakes is part of real life. Yeah. Just as long as you're not actually doing it when you're in that particular job, you know.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you on that, Jane, but the thing with Michael Gove is that he knew when he was going to enter politics, and I think when you enter a job like that, I do think you have to put your hands up and say, look, just before we carry on with this, just to let you know, I have taken drugs. It was a Class A drug. I'm not proud of it, and I just think you have to be really open to the public. The fact that he's doing it now when it suits him because it's for the leadership, I just think that's a bit sneaky.
Yeah, but you don't know if when he could have come out and said that before he went into the political side of things, that he had advisors saying, no, don't mention that, or you won't even get to that stage.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, but also...
And young children, you know, you think about your children and you think, do I want my children to know that about me? I mean, it's, you know...
Well, I agree with that all, but also, you know, bearing in mind, he was the person that introduced new regulations for teachers, and he basically said that they were going to be given lifetime bans for teachers who were... there were regulations on lifetime bans for teachers convicted of drug offences during his time as Education Secretary.
Yeah.
So for me, to tell teachers that you cannot be, you know, you could never have had drugs, and if you find out it's a lifetime ban...
No, I don't think he was saying that. I think he was saying if you're caught with drugs whilst you're a teacher...
Whilst you're teaching.
So if you're 20 years old before you've become a teacher, and then whilst you're a teacher, you're not taking drugs. I don't think it was that. I think it was if you are in the job of a teacher...
and you're doing drugs. Agree.
And the same thing is, if you were an MP caught with taking cocaine, I think your career would be over.
But I still have a problem with that, because if you're advising teachers and you're giving that regulation out, I think the fact that you've taken drugs beforehand, I still think you have to say something like, you know, I know about that because I've done it in the past and I'm not in favour of it because I've got a history of it. It's like a doctor saying to me, you know, you've got to lose weight and you can't do this and you can't do that, otherwise I'm not going to treat you or whatever, but he's sitting there eating a hamburger and he's overweight. I just think there's contradiction, and I have no problem with his past private life, whatever he chooses to do, but I think if you're taking public office and you're advising the public and other people in service, I think you have to be a bit honest and put your hands up.
Yeah.
That's just what I just think.
I think eventually it will always come out, won't it? When you're in that sort of a position, there's always someone out to try and find out something about you, so it's a very dangerous...
I think it's hilarious that she thinks a politician is ever going to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, he declared it in a meeting behind closed doors with obviously quite a few people in 2016 when he was going to run for leader then, and said then, they did a briefing, you know, like they do with all politicians. They go, this is what journalists are going to ask you. Have you ever taken drugs? And he said, yes, I've taken cocaine. Was then advised not to say that in public at the time by his advisors. And, of course, now his hand has been forced by this author who's written this book. Somebody in that meeting, they think, has said this is what he said. And there's so many people in the room, he can't turn around and say, well, no, I didn't say that. So
too many
his hand's been forced.
Well, we asked you at home, should using drugs disqualify you from becoming Prime Minister? 57% of you that took part said yes, it should.
And well, yeah, we haven't sort of specified which drug, I guess.
No, just a general, well, you know...
You've just lost probably 7 of the candidates, I think, if it was drugs per se.
Possibly.